Hey everybody, get my little live stream, get my live stream set up. Good evening, everybody. See if anybody tunes in live with me today. Just gonna sit here for a little bit, chill out, and see if anybody tunes in. Um, it is currently the evening time in my backyard, and usually about this time, the sun is blazing right side of my face because the sun is like right behind me across the trees and shining straight toward the house. But right now the clouds I think are covering it, so I got a few minutes of not having the sun blazing right on my face. But good evening, everybody. As you know, well, as many of you may know, I usually do my back porch talks on my back porch in the morning time. But I didn't get a chance to get out there today, so I decided that I would do it on this back porch this evening. I just came out to just relax at the end of the day. Still got some work that I need to do, but I figure it's better to do it outside than to continue to be cooped up in the house. So I came out here to try to just kind of ground myself and get chill out a little bit as I finished up the last work. And then when I set everything up, I was like, I could do my back porch talk, can talk to folks, and we might even have more people tuning in since it's actually the evening and people are chilling out for the evening instead of like rushing in the morning trying to get ready for work. So thank y'all so much for tuning in today. If you don't know who I am, I'm attorney Veronica McClendon. I'm the owner and CEO of McClendon Law and Consulting located in Macon, Georgia. We serve the entire state of Georgia, though. So if you have family property in the state of Georgia, or you are needing to get some estate planning done and you live in the state of Georgia, holler at our firm. We are happy to help you. We also might be doing some other things in the future as it relates to heirs property or family property, but I'm going to wait and tell y'all about that once I get some more details in place. But I do want to hear, what would y'all like to see? Let me know in the comments. That would help us to create something for those of you who are interested. Let us know, for those of you who are located in the state of Georgia or own property in the state of Georgia, or even for those of you who do not own property in the state of Georgia, but you have heirs property, you have family land, and you are looking to do something with your family land and you could use some help, let me know in the comments or in the chat how my firm might be able to help you. We could be creative. What would be helpful to you? Would a class be helpful to you? Would a coaching program be helpful to you? Would hearing from other family landowners be helpful to you? Other people who also are in similar situations? Let me know what you think, and we'll see what we can put together that might be helpful to people located in the state of Georgia as well as those located outside the state of Georgia. But either way, if you need help with something related to family land, or if you need to get your estate plan in place so that your family does not have to deal with heirs property as far as you're concerned in the future, then let us know. Our contact information is going to be in the description below. Right now, it may not be all the way clear, but there's a way to register for our monthly webinar if that's something you're interested in. But I just came on here this evening. I figured that I would just log in and just go live and see who shows up, see if there's something that I talk about that I can, talk more about. If you have questions, anything that you want me to talk about this evening, let me know. I can talk about heirs property, estate planning, probate, everything to do with family property, family assets. My goal is to help families to really get a handle on their family properties and come up with a plan for managing those properties moving into the future. It's going to help them to actually benefit from the property. Because a lot of times when it comes to heirs property, people are they have this property in their family, and it feels nice to say we got great grandmama's land or we got great granddaddy's farm or whatever it might be. But if you can't really use it, you can't really enjoy it, or people are always fighting over it, and it just feels like more of a stress or a strain on the family rather than a blessing. Like, that's nobody wants to live like that. And so with my firm, our goal is to help families to come up with strategies to plan how they're going to use their family land into the future, and to ensure that family conflicts are minimized, that the family is able to benefit from the property in whatever way makes sense to them. One of my chickens is trying to come up the stairs. They think that I have some food for them. But I don't have anything extra right now. I just was letting them out so they can run around and eat bugs and stuff. But I'm trying to do my video. But y'all want to see them? Yeah, I'll let y'all see them. There goes one. We only have two. One of them died a few months ago. The other one died a couple of years ago. We had four, now we got two. But anyway, going back to the heirs property stuff, a lot of times families are owning these properties and they don't really have a plan for how they're going to manage it, how they're going to utilize it. And so that's where our firm comes in. So y'all tell me, like, what can we talk about this evening? I came on here, just saying I'll respond to whatever questions people might have or any anything that excuse me, these mosquitoes are getting me. But anything that y'all might want to talk about, I would love to just, respond to those things. But in the meantime, y'all know if y'all been tuned into this video, y'all know I can just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. So I actually am supposed to do a video about LLCs and operating agreements. And because I've been spending all day talking about LLCs and operating agreements, I might as well go ahead and do that video. And when I said I was supposed to do a video about that, I'm talking about with my social media person. She gave me a whole list of stuff with points to cover. And I don't know if I'm going to cover those points or not, but I will talk about LLCs and the importance of an operating agreement. Again, I've been spending all day working on that because I have a few clients that I need to get stuff finished up for them. And so I've been working on operating agreements. What I will say is that an LLC is a limited liability company. Every state has their own set of limited liability company laws. A lot of people like to look at key states like Delaware or maybe Wyoming for states where they want to get their LLCs formed. But for my firm, we pretty much just stick with Georgia. We know Georgia's laws may not be as favorable as somewhere like Wyoming or Delaware when it comes to certain things. Let me make sure. Our state, the state of Georgia, may not be as favorable in terms of certain privacy things, or there might be more fees in our state than there are in other states. But I think it's a workable statute, but it's just important to keep in mind that every state has their own limited liability company statute. The rules are going to vary. Every state has their own fees, their own processes and procedures. So it's important that you know which state are you going to form your limited liability company in, and make sure that the laws of that state are going to support what you and your family want to accomplish. So, limited liability company, it is a business entity. It is an unincorporated business entity, which means that it's not a corporation. In some ways, an LLC, limited liability company, can act sort of like a corporation, but it's not a corporation. It's designed to operate differently in many ways. It's supposed to be a little simpler to create than a corporation would be. It's supposed to make things a little easier for people who may not be as well versed in managing the corporation. You don't have to have a board like you do with the corporation. Ooh, this chicken, this chicken flew up behind me. But you don't have to be as you don't have to have a board. Well, she's sliding down, trying to keep herself from falling. Anyway, she just flew up behind me and scared me. But what was I saying? So with an LLC, you don't have to have a board. You don't have to have the same level of what we call corporate formalities as you do with the corporation, but you do still have to operate your limited liability in company in a way that is going to allow you to get the benefits that a limited liability company is supposed to allow you. Those benefits include limiting liability so that your personal business is not getting mixed up with your business. So anything that's being done under the LLC is supposed to have its own, it's supposed to be under a separate entity from you as a person. It's supposed to add some shielding of your personal assets from your business assets. If you have multiple people involved in that limited liability company, then their liability, there's going to be some limits on the liabilities that they face, depending on whether they're doing something in a personal capacity or in the capacity of the LLC. But the only way to really make sure that you have that liability, there are a few things you have to do. But one of those very key things is to make sure that you run that limited liability company with a certain level of formality. You have to, well, not formality, but you have to, oh my gosh, why is that term? It's losing. I'm losing the term right now. It'll come to me later. But you have to run that LLC as if it's a separate entity from you. And what that means is you have separate bank accounts. You have your personal bank accounts. Your LLC has its own bank accounts, and you're not dibbling and dabbling between bank accounts. Like if you need some extra money, you just go grab it from your LLC. You are saying the LLC money is used for LLC business, and if I need money or want money from my LLC, I'm going to go through a particular process to make sure that I get that money in a way that doesn't look like I'm using that bank account from the LLC as my personal bank account. It's very good to have an operating agreement, which is what I'll talk a little bit more about in a few moments. But an operating agreement is very important, and it's very important that you follow that operating agreement, because those are also ways that when a third party, such as a court or someone you're doing business with or the government, when they look at your limited liability company and they look at how it's operating, then they're going to treat it more as separate from you if you have a strong operating agreement and you follow that operating agreement. Um, you have to make sure that you create the operating agreement in a way that is going to support how you and your people do business. And let me just take a step back and say, when it comes to an operating agreement, no, when it comes to a limited liability company, a lot of people like to use them for holding their family land. So if y'all know about heirs property, you know that it's when one or two people own this property, or I won't say one or two, but there's a smaller number of people who may have acquired property. But then when those people die, their interest in the property transfers to their heirs, or if they had a will or a trust, their interest will transfer to the beneficiaries under that will or trust. But what happens is that with each generation, the ownership of the property is transferring over to the next generation, but there's not usually a clear legal documentation to show that that ownership transfer has occurred. So let's say that John Doe owned 50 acres of land, and when he died, he did not have a spouse. He was not married. His spouse died before him, but he had 5 children. When John Doe dies, and he does not, nobody goes through any legal process, at least here in the state of Georgia, that property ownership automatically transfers to John's heirs. So his 5 children would be considered his heirs. There's nothing that has to happen legally to make that ownership transfer happen, but we don't know that it happened unless we're familiar with the family, because there's no legal documentation that has shown that memorializes the fact that the ownership transfer has happened from John Doe to his 5 children. And so imagine that happens again, to where John Doe's 5 children, they each die, and each of them had their own number of children. Some of them may have been survived by a spouse. Their interest is going to be split between their heirs, and the number of people who own that property grows over time. With each generation, each time that a person dies, their property is being transferred to their heirs. Do the chicken check. Make sure that they're not, I don't know where they are, but we're gonna assume that they're okay. So going back to my going back to what I was saying, the number of people who own this piece of property grows over time. And so one way that people manage that type of situation is by creating a limited liability company. And if you can get it done, you get all of the people who have inherited an interest in that property to transfer their interest from their personal name to the LLC, to the limited liability company. And they would do that by using a deed to make that transfer. So they make that transfer to the limited liability company, but at that time, we don't know how they're going to work together. And if we don't have an operating agreement, there's nothing to, the families relying on state law basically to determine how they're going to do business together. Because once you enter that LLC, you're basically business partners at that point. And so you need some kind of rules to determine how are those business partners going to work together. So you have your LLC operating agreement. That agreement is going to list the people who are members of that limited liability company, it's going to state whether or not that LLC is a member managed LLC, which means that the members make decisions related to the property or related to the LLC and how it's run, or a manager managed LLC, which means that a manager is going to run the company, run the LLC. You can have one manager or you can have multiple managers. It all depends on what you put in that operating agreement. And an operating agreement is kind of like bylaws if you have a corporation, where you actually are listing out how the company is going to run, who has what authority, how do you distribute profits that come from the management of the property, if there are any profits, how do you handle tax matters. You got to have some details in place for how income is going to be taxed from the limited liability company, because the IRS and maybe even your state government, they're going to want their money. They want their income tax money. So you got to have some rules as to how they're going to get their money. So you have your members, you have managers if you have them, you have voting rights. You have to spell out how our votes going to be done. Is it that every individual gets one vote, or is voting going to be based on how much of an interest you inherited from your ancestor? So going back to the John Doe example, John Doe had 5 children. Each of his 5 children inherited a 20% interest, just making sure my math is right, a 20% interest or a 1/5 interest in John Doe's land. As those children pass away, then their part, their 20% is going to be split between their heirs. So let's say somebody had a 20% interest, they had 2 children, their 2 children are each going to have a 10% share. And let's say that the family decides that the LLC is going to be run, it's going to be, the membership interests are going to be divided up in the same way that the inheritance was divided up. So that means you'll have family members with different numbers, different percentages of membership interest in that LLC based upon what they inherited from their ancestor. And so you can decide, you want everybody to get one vote. Is the vote dependent on what percentage of an interest you have in the property or in the LLC at this point? You get to decide that as a family. You get to decide what authority the managers have over the LLC without having to get permission from the members. You get to say the managers can make X, Y, and Z decisions without having to get approval from the members. But if there's a decision that's an ABC decision, then the members have to vote to approve it before the managers can make it happen. So you get to lay those things out. You get to lay out what are the responsibilities of the managers. Do the managers have the authority to delegate those responsibilities to other people? You get to state those things in your LLC operating agreement. You also spell things out like what happens when the family decides they don't want to have the LLC anymore. How do we dissolve the LLC? How do we distribute the remaining assets of the LLC? If there's land in the LLC, which in these cases, there's usually going to be land, do we just divide up the land based on the fractions or the percentages that everybody owns from the LLC? Or do we use another way of dividing up the land? Do we sell the land and just split the money up between everybody? You get to state those things in your operating agreement based on how your family wants to run things. One good thing about an LLC is that it can be relatively easy to change or amend the operating agreement if the people who are involved in it decide that that makes sense, that they need to amend it. Because things are going to change. As life goes on, things will change. Things don't stay the same. And so we have to make sure that we account for the potential changes and have a plan in place to make sure that those changes may be made if they need to be made. So I talked about an LLC, why we use them with heirs property, and I talked about the importance of an operating agreement. An operating agreement gives the entity some structure. It tells the members and the managers how they're going to play together, what are the rules for getting money from the LLC, all of those things. And it also is going to state, it's going to give some information to the IRS and other entities how that LLC is supposed to be run. So I'm going to be done with the content part of this because I think somebody's doing some yard work next door. And so it's going to be kind of loud. But I'm gonna hang on here because if y'all can hear me, I will answer questions as someone may have questions. I'll hang around for a little bit and answer any questions that you may have. Let me see if anybody has asked any questions. I don't see any. So I'm gonna assume no one has any questions. I don't know if y'all can hear me anymore. But if you thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in this evening for my back porch talk. I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can round these chickens up and get them in the house. They're probably already in the house because it's starting to get dark. But thank y'all so much for tuning in. If anybody have any questions for me, again, just let me know in the chat and I will do my best to answer them because I'm here for a few more minutes. But for those of you who, I hope you got something helpful from this. Let me know. Just say something in the chat like this was helpful. This was good. I enjoyed it. Next time talk about this. Just let me know so that I can continue to produce content that's helpful to all of you. All right. So just check one more time. So if I don't have any questions or anything like that, thank y'all so much for tuning in. And y'all have a wonderful evening. Take care.